Hey everyone, welcome to the Token Warrant. I'm Mike Zajko. I'm one of your hosts, and we've got my friendly co-host here, Regan Bozman. Regan.
Good. Yeah. Tim Manos. Awesome to have you guys here.
Yeah, super excited to talk DPIN and WeatherXM with Tim from Faction and Manos from WeatherXM. We're gonna have a really fun conversation around their fundraise, the business, the DPIN category more generally, and then more importantly, because this is a podcast where we're talking about the latest deals, really how Faction became aware of WeatherXM and really what got them excited about joining up with them and partnering and investing in this latest round. So maybe just to kick things off, Tim, it'd be great to hear from you first on you, Faction, kind of your backstory, and we'll start there, and then we'll go over to Manos.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me. My name is Tim Khoury. I'm a deal partner at Faction. We're an early stage crypto fund. We're set up as a joint venture with Lightspeed Venture Partners. So we look at all early stage sort of crypto deal flow. Really, that ranges from seed to Series B opportunities, and we're investing out of a dedicated pool of capital specifically for that purpose. I joined Faction about 8 or 9 months ago, was previously at Digital Currency Group, a number of traditional finance roles before that. But yeah, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Welcome. Manos.
And my name is Manolis in Greek, or Manos for short. And I'm co-founder and CEO of WeatherXM. WeatherXM is a community-based weather infrastructure that rewards weather station owners for their contribution to the network, the data contribution, and sells weather data and weather services to weather-sensitive companies and asks them to buy and spend the token in exchange for those services. I'm a computer engineer. We've been working in the space for many, many years, but we did this crypto enhancement a couple of years ago, and we're super excited that Team and Faction is leading our Series A round. And thank you for having me here.
Yeah. Well, welcome again.
I've never heard the term weather sensitive businesses. Is that like, are we talking like wedding planners, music festivals, like farmers, like who? Yeah.
So I mean, I assume the term exists. I've been using it for many years now, but and wedding planners was actually it's an internal joke. We've never delivered any services to them, but it might be an interesting market. Theory says that 2/3, I mean, there are some statistics that claim 1/3, but others 2/3 of the worldwide economy is weather sensitive, which makes kind of sense. Like the weather has a huge effect on everyone's lives and businesses and operations. But there are some industries that are more affected by weather than others, and agriculture is one of them, rain-fed agriculture, and especially. And also the electricity, the energy industry is very much dependent on weather. Both production and consumption is highly correlated with weather conditions. But then you have logistics, you have sports, leisure, anything that is outdoor basically is very much affected. So, and then there's some stuff that are not so obvious, like consumer packaged goods consumption is weather sensitive as well. So, for example, soft drink consumption relates to the heat and the summer conditions of every place. And obviously you can find some kind of weather relationship into anything basically.
Yeah,
I don't know if you read about all the rain at Burning Man last year and the kind of resulting mud. But Mike, I feel like in August we need to bring one of these things out into the playa. We'll be the first ones to know if the storm.
I don't know if we'll get invited back after that, but it might be fun to forecast from there. Manos, I'm glad you brought up sports because we had a conversation previously about the origin story of WeatherXM, and we have a shared passion for sport. And I think it's pretty cool if you want to share the what inspired you to build this business.
I don't know. I mean, it doesn't feel cool anymore. It feels more depressing, to be honest. But so yeah. So when I start at some point, like many years ago, I think 2008, I picked up this unusual at the time sport called kitesurfing. So you have a board and a kite, and you're trying to drag yourself and surf on water using the power of the wind. And obviously it's very sensitive to wind conditions, and it's a little bit tricky to start learning this sport. So you need you cannot do this thing at any time, at any place, at any beach. You need specific direction, specific speed, and stability of wind. It needs not to have gusts, and yeah. So it's typical, I guess, for anyone in that who's interested in those kind of sports to drive a couple of hours to go to a place in hope that everything's going to work out, and then to be disappointed that the weather forecast was wrong and just wasted his entire day. And after it happened to me a couple of times, I was like, how is this possible? And I'm an engineer, I can fix this. And so I started, the first idea there was I need to find a better source of weather forecasting. So I realized that if you look at the forecast from different providers, they're all, contradict each other quite often. And so one of them must be right. So let's find which one is the right one. So we started with this idea in mind. Well, I started with this idea in mind because it took me some time to convince others. So I started a small service that was aggregating third-party forecasts and real time and real conditions from weather stations. Try to answer for myself, like what is a good forecast provider and what's a bad one. And then I convinced my colleagues and friends at the time, who are my co-founders today, also computer engineers. I convinced them that maybe there's value in this. Maybe we can actually create a service product that makes sense to companies, because this information is not out there. If you want to find this exact information, like which weather forecaster is the best for your location, actually, I don't think you can have this answer today. And it's been almost 15 years. So we started with that idea. We did a small mobile app. We didn't know how to monetize that. We came across the problem of not having enough ground truth data and not enough weather stations, basically. So that was an extra problem. So we thought, ideally we should have hundreds of thousands of weather stations in order to solve the problem, who's the best forecaster. And those were the early ideas, basically, that kicked off the project in 2012 when we first tried to fundraise, and we failed. But we got a glimpse of the startup ecosystem in Silicon Valley because we went there, being romantic, in hope that just by going there, it would rain money or something. So we went to San Francisco. We spoke with investors. We spoke with other founders, with other startups, with accelerators, and that's when we got hooked that this is what we want to do, basically. So we've been working on this since. And I'm not kite surfing anymore because I don't have time.
Yeah, I've been giving him a hard time because he built this whole network in order to help get out on the water, and then he's
it was a selfless exercise. Now everyone else gets the good wind.
Yeah, this is our savior, the martyr here, Manos. So this is an interesting thread because I feel like the DPIN journey is similar for a lot of founders in this space. I mean, like I'm trying to solve this problem. It's kind of like it's just not not really possible or it's very challenging. And then coming across, in many cases, Helium. So at what point did you guys discover this model? Because clearly, if you started this in 2012, none of this existed. This is all very recent.
Yeah. So in 12, what we used to call this idea a crowdsourced weather observation network. So we were just following on the steps of Weather Underground. That was quite popular at the time, or it just started to decline, but it was popular for us because we were kind of aware of it already. And at the time also, there was another popular phrase called gamification. And so we were thinking that we could incentivize users, the community, to engage and provide weather data in a manual fashion, like fill in, press buttons and report on weather conditions. And we could incentivize them with gamification techniques because Foursquare was popular at the time. And so we thought, yeah, we'll have the mayor of the beach that has done the most reports and it's the most accurate one. And then we were thinking, we should give them the possibility to also provide forecasts, because some of them might know something that we don't, and give them some kind of credit for that. But we never thought that credit would be actually a cryptocurrency or a token or something blockchain related. We didn't see a reason for that.
It reminds me of like the traffic on Waze. It's like people they'll tell you where the policeman is solely out of the goodness of their heart.
Yeah. And it could have worked, to be honest. It wouldn't work as it does today, but crowdsourced weather observation networks existed and still do today. So there are some weather enthusiasts that are willing to spend money and energy just for the good of humankind, and to share. And maybe there's some hidden, geek in them that wants to share some scientific information and have a scientific discussion around weather. For sure, that's the case with a lot of them. But yeah, so to go back to your question, we for the first few years we thought we never thought crypto could help, and we didn't know how to pull it off either. So what we ended up doing was industrial IoT solutions for B2B companies, so we went straight to the customers where the money was, so we could survive from this business, because we had a company and it was doing well, but it depends how you define well. So we had a lot of customers, but we were not making a lot of revenue to grow the company, basically. So it was a small company. We were like 5-6 people. And one thing that we had quite strong in the company was technical expertise when it comes to new technologies. So we deployed the first LoRaWAN network in Greece back in 2015. I was super excited about LoRa at the time. I was part of the Things network. I was the Athens initiator, and I was preaching that let's do this crowdsource wireless network that belongs to the people, and we don't need telcos. We can do our own thing, because I wasn't very happy with the internet connectivity in Greece at the time, and still not today either. But so I thought, yeah, we can do something better than this. And we were deploying LoRaWAN gateways in Athens. We had deployed a bunch of them, and we had some customers as well. We had Athens Airport as a customer, and we did the first private network there as well, at a time that nobody knew what LoRa was. And because we were very much involved with LoRa, we were aware of Helium as a system integrator in the US that was doing something. It was trying to innovate in some SDKs with some hardware and some modules, but it wasn't very interesting for us because we had the capability to play with hardware already. So we were in a similar, obviously less mature, and we will not VC funded either. But we felt like we don't need their services. We can do this thing on our own. And all we need is the community of the Things Network. And we're happy that we're in Europe because the Things Network started from Europe. And then all of a sudden, Helium makes this pivot into crypto. And we're like, oh, how is this possible? And like, this is so American. They're putting dollars into this. And then when it started taking off, it was a huge surprise to me personally, because initially I thought this is a scam. This is all this crypto stuff is a scam. That was my first reaction. Obviously, not everything is a scam, and so we were inspired by Helium. Then we found out Filecoin and IPFS, and that's when we started becoming Web3 developers. Basically, that's in 2019 when we started exploring the possibility of doing Filecoin or Helium for weather.
Got it. That's cool. I'm glad you don't think it's a scam anymore, and hopefully you can convince the lovely people of Greece that we're all good actors here in crypto land. This is probably a good time to start to transition to, like, you recognize, okay, here's a solution to the problems we have on how to scale up this network. We want to go build in crypto, build in Web3. Was it a matter of like, okay, let's come up with it. Let's build that framework and then go start talking to investors? Because I think you guys, had previously raised a round from some crypto investors a couple of years ago, before the one that the Faction just led. So, what's that journey from a fundraising perspective on the crypto side look like?
So to be honest, I don't know if this is good or bad. I mean, I hope it's good, but we were thinking like conservative engineers. So we wanted to get something working first before we actually spoke to anyone about it, because we felt that as engineers, our strength is the fact that we can, build stuff and understand how things work. So if we go to a fundraise environment and we don't have that, then we don't have anything, because we don't have, the rest of the typical skills required for closing a business deal or closing a fundraise. At least that is, the conservative geek thinking. So we had a small investment. That we got a small investment from SOSV Hacks in 2018. And because of that, we went to China, Shenzhen, and we started building our own weather station, which at the time we thought was a necessary component into our to the evolution of the company in any way. So this was irrelevant to the crypto thing, and it was actually before the crypto thing. So in 2019. When we decided that that possibly there's an opportunity here, and we are in a very good position because we were just completing our engineering prototypes of a new weather station. So we were in a position to create something different in the market that didn't exist. And so we thought like, okay, there's no crypto compatible or crypto native or crypto enabled weather station, so why not turn ours into one and then try to use that as a differentiation to see what we can do with this. And so in 2019 we decided to work towards that direction, and we did it in an open source style. So we have in GitHub, our old company, which is called Ex Machina, exm.gr, has created an open hardware project with full all the details of the product are there, like plastics and PCBs and firmware and everything. And that weather station proof of concept kind of project was a device that was a weather station that connects directly to IPFS, and from there we were using Chainlink to pick up the data from IPFS and serve them to an Ethereum smart contract and emulate parametric weather insurance on chain situation in a very, very simple way. So it was just a proof of concept for us to understand what are we doing here. And actually, it was that project that kicked off the opportunity for funding, because Consensus and Protocol Labs, well, we submitted that project into a hackathon in the IPFS category, and they found us basically. So they Consensus reached out. Gabriel, that now is in Papergraph Capital, he found us, and he was in a way trying to convince us to pivot towards that direction, because at the time we didn't know what exactly to do, and the helium for weather sounded too big as an idea for us to pursue. Again, the conservative gig thinking was very strong at the time. So anyway, my point is that we entered the Tachyon Accelerator, and we got a small investment from Protocol Labs and Consensus, and that made our life quite easier, because of that, it was easier then to do the seed round, the proper seed round, with placeholder VC leading the round, Chris Burniski, and attracting more capital from Protocol Labs and Consensus, but also from MetaPlanet, Borderless Capital, and some other good investors, including Juan Benet himself from Filecoin. And yeah, so that was the seed round.
I'd imagine you for the seed round, like flying out to Hawaii to meet Chris, predicting the surf forecast, and just like demoing this for him right there.
You have no idea how many times I said to myself I should do that, but I haven't actually. And I'm not sure how much Chris was influenced by the fact he's a surfer into believing in what we do. But we never had a chance to meet in that context.
Fast forwarding to now, and would love to kind of dive into the current fundraise. Tim, maybe to kick it to you, like, how did you guys hear about WeatherXM? How did you meet Manos? I'm sure like the weather and blockchain Venn diagram, there's not a lot that like fits into that, but like, what got you excited enough to kind of take a call and dig in here?
Yeah, so we had initially come across WeatherXM a couple years ago at the time of the previous fundraise. I think at that time, it seemed a bit, super interested by the concept and the potential for the idea. I think, seemed a little early for us given the stage that we're sort of typically investing in. We reconnected with Manos late last year, beginning of this year. And we're able to see sort of the progress that had been made, and started our diligence process for the Series A sort of in earnest. So I think the fact that there are so many devices that are live on the network, there's real data that points to the quality of the forecast really being superior to other sort of weather forecasting models that are out there. That's sort of how we started to build conviction. I mean, I can walk you through sort of the thesis and the diligence process if that's helpful. But yeah, we have spent some time looking at DeepIn as a category, and really believe that WeatherXM sits in this really unique vertical. Whereas you say, Regan, there really aren't many other weather DeepIn projects out there. And we've got sort of comfort over the course of our diligence process that weather is incredibly important to so many industries out there. I think Manos at the beginning of this mentioned sort of the percentage of I guess worldwide commerce that is impacted by weather, but just to state a few sort of really obvious ones. Agriculture, which we touched on before, both for crops and for livestock, predicting precipitation, predicting temperatures, it has a material impact on farmers' ability to plan and also to get insured for what they're actually selling. Power and energy. If you are a power company and you can predict for temperature 2 or 3 days out to a higher degree of accuracy, if people are going to be switching on the air conditioning, turning up the heating, and those are the biggest drivers of residential power consumption. So you can plan a lot better for the future, and you can sort of hedge yourself more appropriately. There's a real sort of material impact there. Insurance, property and casualty insurance, if you know if it's going to rain, if there's going to be a hailstorm, right? You can really predict to a better degree, right? Actual dollar amount of payouts that you might be required to fulfill. So this is important for the insurance industry. I could go on and on and on, right? Transport, freight.
So I guess going beyond market size, which it definitely seems like it's quite a large market. I feel like every DPIN network, when we evaluate it, it's like, okay, like what's the centralized alternative, and kind of what vector is this company competing on? Is it cost? Is it reliability?
Yeah.
Would love to kind of understand how you think about that with WeatherXM, and maybe like I'm trying to wrap my head around kind of a traditional like weather forecasting business. Is it just like I raised a bunch of money, I deploy all these stations in like the area I'm covering, and then I kind of charge like a subscription for access? Like, yeah, would love to dig into that a bit more.
Sure. So I guess two competitors that we paid a good amount of attention to are, first of all, there are quite a lot of government-run weather networks out there. So NOAA, I'm going to get this wrong, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
Nailed it, Tim.
Nailed it. Okay, cool.
Have you ever seen their Santa tracker?
I have, yeah.
Okay, so that's how like every American kid knows about NOAA. But anyway, so sorry to interrupt here.
Yeah, it's pretty epic. Yeah, so they run a network of weather stations around the world. Manos can correct me if I'm getting this wrong. It's 14 or 15,000 weather stations that they administer. They spend almost $1.5 billion a year to operate those stations, process the data, and generate forecasts. So that was kind of an interesting sort of data point for us as to, what one of these sort of centralized services looks like, and how, by sort of distributing that out and pushing that collection out really to a distributed network to the edges, you might be able to do that much more efficiently and generate, forecasts that are, as or if not more accurate. I'll get into that in a second. The other one, which Manos mentioned a short while ago, is Weather Underground. So I guess just to elaborate on that, that's an initiative of the Weather Company, which IBM bought, a few years ago. I believe they were just bought by a private equity firm more recently than that, in a multi-billion-dollar transaction. But the idea there was that it was a network of individual users around the world. There are about 200,000, data points being submitted to the network, but being submitted by heterogeneous hardware. So really anyone with any kind of makeshift weather station could submit data to Weather Underground. That's used to inform forecasts, and then people could benefit from the forecast. But they were unincentivized to do so. This is, kind of what we were talking about earlier, purely out of the goodness of their own hearts. So that, I guess, was a data point that there is a global community of people who are passionate about the weather and about more accurate forecasts, however those are accomplished. So yeah, those were a couple of data points in terms of alternatives. Then I think the question becomes one of forecasting, reliability and accuracy. And I guess there's the theoretical way of approaching this and the data-driven way of approaching this. And theoretically, we got comfortable that if you have a higher resolution network of input data to a weather model, you should get a better forecast. Like, why is that the case? If you've heard of, chaos theory and like the butterfly effect, right? A butterfly flapping its wings in the Amazon can cause like a hurricane, on the other side of the world. Weather systems are complex systems, and they're highly sensitive to initial conditions. So it almost seemed like axiomatic to us that higher resolution input data you get, provided that your models are sensible, should result in better forecasts. And that was the theoretical point. And then when we actually looked at the data as part of our diligence process, WeatherXM puts out this mosaic forecast, and I'm sure Manos can, tell us more about how that is constructed. but we looked at some of the data points comparing the accuracy of those forecasts 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days out to alternatives, and it is more accurate. So it's actually proven out in practice, and that was a really big factor for us in our diligence process. I don't know, Manos, if you want to speak more about
Tim is pitching this better than me because he knows how the language works with the investors. But he's right. Obviously, those are facts. What I want to highlight is that we are kind of hacking the meteorology industry in many ways with our approach, but we are building on top of what already exists out there. So if we didn't have NOAA, our work would be way more difficult, and it would be more difficult for us to produce a better forecast than what they do if we were starting from scratch. So we're not trying to replace them or to compete with them. In reality, we're building on top of them. So we are enhancing what they already provide by adding more points, more data points into the data, into the forecast, and so on, without without them having to change what they do in many ways. So, and to unpack this a little bit, so it's the chaos theory applies very much in this in this industry. So the initial conditions that the traditional meteorological organizations use are satellite data, airplanes, weather balloons, and ground stations. Ground stations are super important because they're used, in many cases, they're used to calibrate the previous data, the satellite data, for example. But the problem with ground stations is that they're just pinpoints in a huge map, and they're not enough. And the 14,000 that NOAA is operating, it's a very small number. And all the meteorological organizations, they repeatedly point out that we need more weather infrastructure, we need more stations, and especially in some continents, basically, a huge list of countries that have poor weather infrastructure, which is making NOAA's work more difficult because NOAA is doing a global simulation. So if you have a lot of weather stations in New York, it doesn't help the global forecast a lot. And then, and at the same time, if you have gaps or in the data, or because some of the stations are not maintained properly because they are super expensive to maintain, or if you have missing data, or if you have wrong data, the whole forecast goes wrong. That's the sensitivity factor we were talking about. So it's normal that forecasts will never be perfect. And in fact, there are some rough statistics that say that every, I think, 10 years in the meteorological industry, the forecast improves so much that you benefit the accuracy of 1 day ahead, 1 day sooner. So it's really difficult and really slow and really expensive. So the 1.3 billion out of NOAA's budget that goes to weather infrastructure and forecasting, a portion of that budget is related with running Creon machine supercomputers to do the forecast, because that's another challenge there. There's not a lot of organizations out there that have the CPU power to produce this simulation and have the simulation being executed in a short period of time, like in a few hours. So then it can start again with new data and do this continuously. And I think that's another great area that DeepIn and crypto can help with, all the AI and decentralized computation.
Yeah, it's like spreading out kind of that resource allocation. Yeah.
But sorry. So I was going to say that the way we do it, we're building on top of what already exists out there. So we use our weather data. I mean, we hope that one day meteorological companies will take our data and put them into the source, at the beginning of the whole process. But this is not happening today. So what we do today is we take their output and we improve it with our own techniques. And it's not so difficult to do so if you have the knowledge and the true data of the weather conditions at the point you want to improve. So we don't do global forecasts we do pinpoint forecasts, but we can prove that our forecasts are more accurate, or at least are at the top three of the accuracy of all the other models.
So out of curiosity on that, you mentioned that accuracy. Like, I feel like a lot of DeepIn networks, there's kind of like one KPI for them. Like, I'd imagine with Helium, it's something like, does the network work, right? Which is like a very like objective thing. What's the latency? What's the uptime? Is there like a single accuracy metric for like, oh, my forecast is better than yours, that like you or like other weather companies kind of use to compare data?
This is a very good point, and there is no standard.
Maybe I just gave you a new idea for the for the business
so
here.
There is a lot of data there, like a lot of previous work. So the techniques that we use to measure our forecast accuracy, I would guess that is more or less typical for any meteorological organizations, because they do it as well. They do it for themselves, but I'm guessing not a lot do it for the others too.
Yeah,
Everybody does it for their own sake. So, for example, in temperature, we do root mean square error measurements between the forecast and the actual conditions. But then in precipitation, there are some more sophisticated techniques that one has to use. Or with wind, it becomes more tricky, and it's not. I don't think everybody has agreed that we should measure accuracy in that specific way. And then we do some other stuff in addition to that. We mix everything together. So we have our weights and our factors, and we come up with our own quality of forecast, we call it, report. And I don't think that is a standard, obviously, because we invented it, but I don't think a standard exists. So there will be, if there were more companies that were doing the same thing that we do in public, we will have this problem of different opinion or
yeah, like comparing them.
But we are more or less alone. I mean, in the private weather industry, there is I am aware of one other company that is doing those reports on behalf of meteorological companies. So those are their customers. But other than that, I don't think anyone else is doing it. So we don't have this problem yet. But we're doing a lot of our work open source. It's already open source. The algorithms we use for those things are open. So I hope I would, find myself in a debate with meteorologists that we're doing it wrong, and hopefully they will show us a better way to do it. But we haven't reached that yet.
Tim, I had a question for you on the investment process. I know
Please.
On the Faction team, there's some DeepIn skeptics, and you speak so eloquently to weather. At least you remembered the acronym for NOAA. But yeah, and walk me through the process of like the diligence. Who were you talking to? I mean, do you have a background in weather that you can point to, and then just how you kind of brought the rest of the team over the line? Since I think the broader category, I don't know if Faction has done as many investments in DeepIn. So Manos, hats off to you to get these guys signed up.
Well, I was born in and grew up in the UK, so I guess there's sort of an intrinsic passion for weather forecasting that is innate.
So is it sunny enough to go down to the pub this afternoon?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And my partner, Sam Harrison, is also British. So, I don't know what factor that played. It probably played some factor. We are weather enthusiasts. But yeah, to answer your question, diligence process revolved around a few things. Market size, which we've talked about. I guess sort of the theoretical and the practical aspect of forecast accuracy, and then sort of the various industries in which demand for these forecasts, would be needed. So one of the things we haven't yet talked about is, I guess, the weather forecasts can be used by, traditional companies in a completely sort of off-chain way, right? They license the ability to sort of commercialize the data and the forecasts from Manos and from WeatherXM. We can talk more about how the token is used in that process, but the data and the companies are fundamentally off-chain. There's actually also an interesting on-chain element here as well, which is having these forecasts and these readings, able to be pushed to smart contracts for various purposes. Kind of this idea of a weather oracle. So we spoke with an on-chain insurance, company that is looking to utilize WeatherXM data to inform, prediction markets and insurance payouts, sort of based on, what weather readings are going to be in the future. So that was a really interesting data point for us. We spoke with a power company that is relying on the fact that data from these stations is cryptographically signed, which is sort of a required part of this process, that each station is sort of homogeneous and signs data at the edge, at the point of the reading actually being taken. So you kind of have this audit trail that goes sort of right the way through data collection to the actual forecast result. That's important for on-chain use cases, but it's also important, for example, when a power company wants to prove that maybe a wildfire didn't start in a specific area. We have a cryptographically signed reading of the temperature from this station in this location in this time period. So that was pretty interesting to us as well. And then research on the agricultural industry, research on weather contracts that are traded on the CME. There's actually there are people out there who spend all day trading weather contracts on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and there are billions of dollars of volume annually of those contracts that are traded. I think that again speaks to the importance of this data sort of across industries. So those were all pretty key components, and then understanding the tokenomics and how this sort of latent demand that we believe exists for these forecasts actually translates into demand for the WXM token. The flip side of that is pretty obvious to us. We talked about Weather Underground. If people will contribute data to a network for free, they will likely also do so for tokens, and they will be more incentivized to do so if they're receiving sort of rewards. So when it comes to the flywheel, there's a community of people who are passionate about weather and want more reliable forecasts. This is on the supply or the retail side. You're also incentivizing them to do this. And there are 5,000 stations on the WeatherXM network today. You could see that ballooning pretty quickly. You could see stations really popping up all around the world, which again increases the quality of forecasts and the data that's being collected. And you kind of have this virtuous cycle that we think can come into effect. I wanted to give Manos maybe an opportunity to talk about, I guess, when it comes to the tokenomics, how you can use that to incentivize certain behaviors, whether it's more accurate readings or readings in certain locations where you may not have as much coverage, because I think that's an important component here as well.
Just before diving into that, I think, and we're short on time, so maybe keeping this like a little bit shorter, but like we never really dived into like exactly how someone participates in the network. Like, can you just really quickly cover, like, I'm a weather nerd, I'm in San Francisco, like how could I contribute to WeatherXM?
So you need to get one of our weather stations. And unfortunately, we couldn't support existing weather stations for a number of reasons. But the most important one is that we cannot have data points that we don't have proofs that the station itself exists. So that's the reason why we had to build all these things, because we added a crypto element, a chip that signs the payload of the sensors. And we also added a secure GPS module there. So we know that those data was produced at the exact location at the exact time. And by this specific hardware, and we onboard this information in blockchain and Filecoin as well. So we respect all these proofs, and that's how we claim that we will act as a weather oracle when that is needed, when those services are required. So for you to join the network as a weather enthusiast, you have to get one of those devices, and you have to set it up. And we try to make it as easy as possible. So, for example, the Helium device, there's absolutely nothing to do other than just add some AA batteries, and there's nothing to configure. You just put the batteries and put it outside, and it works. And you just claim it from the mobile app, which the claiming process is just the way of you telling the network that you have activated the device and that your wallet is connected with that particular device, so you can get the rewards. But there is a small obstacle in deploying the weather station, which is you have to put it in a proper place. So if you activate the device in your bedroom and you leave it there forever, then it's not giving us any useful data. We will accidentally make a forecast for your bedroom, and we do this on purpose because we think some customers actually want that. They want a wrong meteorologically speaking forecast for a weird location that they put the stations. But from a perspective of monetizing that data produced there's not a lot of value, and so we won't give you rewards. So the idea here is that you have to follow our guidelines into deploying this station outdoor, as far away from obstacles as you can, quite high, like in a couple of, we recommend 2 to 4 meters pole, and to be placed on top of a pole. And we have created a lot of mechanisms to detect if you're actually did it as we ask you to. And if we figure out that you're not following our guidelines, we reduce the rewards or we cut them completely. And so that gives an incentive to the community to do as good of a job as possible. And we actually have very, very good quality of data in the network as a result of that. Like more than 80% of the devices, they appear to be in pristine condition. Maybe we're wrong in the way that we're evaluating them, but at least there are no data gaps. There's no connectivity issues. We cannot detect any obstacles. We don't have anything blocking the sensors. And the data, they don't have any anomalies. They don't have spikes and weird stuff. And because we have created a lot of exotic algorithms to detect more unusual stuff, but those are very R&D, and we're still iterating on them, so we could be wrong in some cases.
Got it. Out of curiosity, like, did a lot of investors kind of install these during diligence for this round?
We did.
Okay.
I've got one outside right now. Everyone else on the faction in the United States has done the same thing.
Where is the dog?
It's not mine.
I think you guys did like very early, actually. You got the hardware at the beginning of the due diligence. And I was surprised by that, because I think all of our investors by now have our weather station, but some of them were kind of late into the process. So yeah, you did. Tim has spent a lot of time. So I know we are not touching on this topic, and that was supposed to be the topic of the discussion. And I'm sorry for giving too much information on technical details that probably nobody cares. So I think Tim spent more than a month looking into the project in a lot of details, like speaking with customers and deploying hardware, and I'm sure you did a lot of research that didn't involve me before that. So yeah,
got it. That might be a good place to end. We could definitely chat a lot more. We didn't even get to a lot of topics like what blockchain you guys are on and all the technical details of actually building out the network. But that is for a future date. So maybe just to close things out, Manos, Tim, thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations on the fundraising round. Super excited. And maybe, what's coming next? Where should people follow you, stay up to date on both of you individually or both of your firms?
Feel free to follow us on Twitter, Faction VC. Let me just double check that is our precise handle.
Can we get a forecast? What's the weather for the weekend in London? What's your device saying?
Go to the Explorer very quickly.
Okay,
so,
we could see it there.
I think so. We had all the forecasts in the Explorer, and then we did this, try to do a funnel kind of thing. So we're asking you to install our app in order to see the forecast. So yeah, for the audience, if you go to explorer.weatherxm.com, you can actually see the forecast we produce at all the blue hexagons that we have.
All right, I'm going to download this
stations. And actually all the data are open and free for non-commercial use. So we have a dual license thing. So if you're commercializing on the data, you have to buy a license, and that license is paid in WXM tokens, and there's an auction mechanism. So we didn't unpack the tokenomics, but yeah, anyway, the rewards are on Arbitrum, the data are in Filecoin, and we're actually bridging some tokens for the Solana ecosystem because we're experimenting with some stuff there as well. So we're trying to use the best technologies we can get our hands on and combine them because system integrators are hard anyway.
No one's in my hometown, so it's time for me to order one.
No one's in my neighborhood in San Francisco.
It's time to fix that. I'm going to get right on to WeatherXM. And then Manos, how about you? Follow you individually. Follow the project. Can you?
So Twitter and so WeatherXM on Twitter and on weatherxm.com, we have links to our Discord server and LinkedIn if for more enterprise customers.
Hey, you need to hire people. I'm sure some weather engineers.
We're hiring a lot of people actually. No, we haven't even posted all of our vacancies, but we definitely need to hire more backend and embedded engineers. In addition to business marketing growth and a lot of other things. So do check out our career page.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We'll be sure to see a forecast soon, and thank you all.
Yeah, thanks
for having us. Cheers.